Hi there and welcome back to the one, the only, the Valencia Property Podcast. Possibly the only podcast that doesn't invite awkward sociopaths in to discuss being cancelled while being platformed repeatedly and owning the largest social media site in the world. The only podcast that refused the Spotify filthy lucre, and the only podcast known to mankind not sponsored by HelloFresh, NordVPN, Shopify or ShipStation. Yes, the truly independent Valencia Property Podcast doesn't depend on you signing up to our Patreon, buying us a coffee on Ko-Fi, or feeding us with super chats on YouTube. Some might claim it's because the audience figures make this totally unfeasible. I couldn't possibly comment. We do this because it serves our community well and helps me to answer questions that our current and future clients raise by saying, we have a whole podcast or blog post or video about that. Anyway, the year started busily with plenty of signings and people visiting looking for their own ideal property in Valencia. January, as always, was a bit of a surprise, as getting back to work after the huge number of holidays in Valencia and Spain is always a bit weird. And then we were hit with a huge drain on available properties after the first week of January, as it seemed everything had been sold. And it's from that, and experience over the rest of the month, that we wrote our latest article on the blog, Blink and It's Gone. Now, if you prefer reading, head over to the blog for the full version. The link, as usual, is in the show notes. But why would you prefer reading? You're already listening. So here, we'll give you the basics. Blink, and it's gone. One of our team is looking for an apartment to buy and rent out. Like me, they want to put a lower price point to the rental in order to give people an option for renting that won't break the bank, meaning they get a good tenant and the tenant gets a good deal. 3 times this week, they've been notified of potential properties in their price range and with the requirements they want, and each time clicking on the link in the notification, the advert was gone because the properties have been sold immediately. So I wrote this on Saturday morning in the Cabanyal. We don't normally do visits at the weekend, but on Saturday we had 4 visits, one after the other, to an apartment that we have for sale that normally we don't get access to because it's consistently rented out. The owners even recently rejected a full price offer because, let's just say, reasons. Now having returned home, we have one offer made and we may get another. In other words, once more, blink and it's gone. So what are the reasons for this huge demand? For those of you who like listicles, here's an audio version of a listicle but without the explanations. 1. The Eurozone and reduced interest rates to try and stimulate the economies of Germany and France. 2. Rental prices being so high, mortgage payments are much lower. 3. Government support for young people wanting to buy. The government acts as a guarantor. 4. Spain has the highest economic growth in the Eurozone. 5. Immigration, and those immigrants working, including Digital Nomad Visa people. 6. Increasing minimum wage and general rise in salaries. 7. A total lack of building and supply. It's sort of like a perfect storm to push up prices of a scarce resource. And when Valencia and Spain are usually regarded as the best places to live in the world, we'll investigate someone who disagrees vehemently with that later, by the way, then blink and it's gone. You can read the rest of this article on the blog on what to do about it. But just to let you know that we wrote another blog post to give you that reassurance that you'll be able to land here safely and securely by getting one of our medium-term rentals in Valencia through our sister company, Stepping Stone Rentals. And that blog post is also in the show notes with latest availability of what you can get for 3 months. The next thing is quite important if you've been trying to get in touch with us after the 7th of January. We've had a problem and it affects you. Our famous form for clients to fill in when they start working with us has not been working for a few weeks. It's embedded in so many of our pages, and we only realized after one of our potential clients asked about why he hadn't had a reply. Thanks, Nelson. We then realized that it wasn't working, it hadn't been working for a time, and we hadn't noticed because we had so many other individual property inquiries from the footer form on each page. So we realized that we may have missed some clients as we didn't respond. And if you're one of them and you are listening to this, well, it may be the form is fixed now, But if you haven't had a response from us, then a mail to information@valencia-property.com will get an immediate response, or rather within 24 hours at least. And sorry if you felt we had ignored your request. That wasn't the case. We just didn't see it. The next thing and the biggest request we've had for information on this podcast is an explanation of the 100% tax on homes, or the complete banning of purchases by non-EU residents in Spain, proposed by the government to general disbelief and panic in the online forums a couple of weeks ago. So let's talk about that potential 100% tax bombshell for foreign buyers of property in Spain. And firstly, let's define foreign here. Non-EU is the first thing, so Brits, Americans, Canadians, or as they're soon to be known, Americans, Mexicans, or as they may soon be known, Americans, Australians, you get the drift. Non-resident, right? Not living here and registered as resident. So if you are British, if you are American, if you are Canadian American, if you are Mexican American, etc., you will be okay if you are already registered here and resident here. So first things first. Don't panic. I was interviewed on a couple of UK radio stations about this, and you can listen to one of the interviews here now. This is what I said. Hi, how you doing?
Good, thank you for being with us. So just explain to us, how long have you lived in Spain? What's your job? What's your life like? Just give us an insight and make us very jealous, I'm sure.
Okay, I left the UK after university. I've been in Spain for over 30 years. I've been in Valencia for 26 years now, and I run a company, Valencia-property.com, and we sell most of our properties. And I'll just correct you on one thing: I'm a British immigrant into Spain. We don't call ourselves expats.
Why? Don't you like that?
Because we're immigrants. As simple as that. We've moved from one country to another. You know, in my case, economic immigrant, because I came here to earn money.
Yeah.
We sell to mostly non-EU people, coming from the UK and coming from the States, for example. That was 62% of our business. If this were to go through, it would probably destroy our business, so we'd have to pivot very much. I don't think it's going to go through. I don't see how they get it through.
Interesting. Have you seen a surge in the cost of rents and property prices in the period that you have lived in Spain as a result of so many people wanting to go and live there?
Well, it's a long time that I've been here, so I've seen it twice. I saw it before the financial crisis in 2008, and then I saw the crash after that as well. It's very different now because we're in a low interest rate environment over here in Europe, amongst other things. But the demand is off the scale now to come to live in Spain from various parts of the world. And a couple of years ago, the Spanish government started the Digital Nomad Visa, or the remote worker visa. We've also got the Non Lucrative Visa, which a lot of British immigrants use when they are coming over with their pensions, for example. And yeah, the amount of demand at the moment is really off the scale, and there's not enough building going on. That is the main problem, along with Airbnb, of course. But the main problem is there's just not enough building going on, and the planning process takes a long, long time.
That's interesting. So currently there hasn't been a drop off in the number of inquiries as a result of, and I realise it's only been in the last few days, but I guess maybe people are trying to rush this through before any rules could be brought in.
I think that's it. I mean, there's a generalized panic. If you go onto one of the immigrant forums, or they call them American expats in Valencia in Spain, British expats in Spain, etc., on Facebook, the panic is real because it's been presented as this is going to happen. As I said before, it's very difficult to see the government getting this through Parliament and getting it through the Senate. They don't hold a majority in the Senate. Getting all this agreed, it will require a lot of horse trading. When they announced the end of the Golden Visa last year, it took them a year to get it through. It'll be finishing on the 3rd of April. So we'll be doing the same as we did with the Golden Visa. We say, if you're worried about it, buy now.
Can you understand the tension? Do you ever experience it from Spanish people, a sort of hostility towards you or other people who are, well, you live in Spain, but you're not, historically Spanish. Do you get that sense that sometimes people say, why are you here? You're taking housing that could be used by locals?
Not at all in this area. What you find is generally towards holidaymakers, and especially to people with Airbnbs.
Yeah.
The majority of people with Airbnbs are Spanish. They buy second houses, they buy third houses, and they rent them out. And they rent them out to Airbnb because they get more money than renting it out on the local market. The big issue really is if they stop or at least limit Airbnb. So that there weren't so many holiday rentals, because getting access to property, getting access to somewhere to live, even if it's rent, not to buy, is very, very difficult, especially for young people in Spain. And with the prices going up, and it's generally caused by Airbnb and holiday rentals. It's not caused by 27,000 people buying places on the Costas every year. And Sanchez said during his speech, most of these people bought them to invest and make money. That is simply not true. Most of those people came over to live, or they use it as a holiday home and they do not rent it out.
Hopefully that was clear enough for you. But since then, things have moved on. However, nothing has become clearer. Sanchez was interviewed in Davos and repeated the same lie about 27,000 buyers for investment who don't live in the property. So it's evident he's preparing the ground for a Denmark or a Canada-style solution to a non-existent problem. Stop right there, Graham, I hear you say. A non-existent problem? Well, yes. The 27,000 supposed non-EU buyers who don't live there generally bought holiday homes on the coast for use in the summer or even to live all year round. They are not generally competing with the average Spanish first-time buyer for a sub-200k property within one of the big cities or nearby to get a foothold on the property ladder. They're not even competing with people on the coast where they are buying, because there is an excess of property in many of these areas because people move from there to the big cities for work. They're actually helping to keep some of these places alive in the winter when there are no Spanish people there, and a lot of the coastal areas would resemble ghost towns if it wasn't for the retirees that populate them. Demand is a function of work and leisure wherever you are. The average Spaniard wants to live where they work, or very close, and have leisure facilities around them: bars, shops, restaurants, gyms. In other words, they want to live in big cities and satellite towns around those cities. The proposed ban or restriction will have no effect because, as we say in Spain, hecho la ley, hecho la trampa. What does that mean? So it means when the law is made, the way around it is also made too. Just like all the tax laws that corporations get around in order to pay little or no tax because the laws were made by accountants who used to work in the corporations, there will be various ways to get around any new law. Firstly, if it's a ban on non-residents and non-EU buyers, then people will rent first, piling even more pressure onto the rental market. And once residency is granted, then they will buy. Secondly, if it's a total ban on non-EU and non-residents, then people will buy already existing Spanish shell companies, easy enough to do, and buy through the company. They will just fund the company. There'll be an explosion of companies buying properties rather than individuals, and having a single asset in those companies, the property. They'll have nebulous shareholder agreements too, so the Spanish government won't be able to see who's the real owner of that company. I can already see new businesses setting up Spanish business entities with nominative shareholders who do the spade work for foreign buyers. Thirdly, people will buy through family members already here. There will then be the inventive ways around any ban. I hate to think what will happen if the ban or tax comes in, but, and here's the most important thing, I don't think it will. I can't see Sanchez getting it through Parliament. Show me a clear route and I might believe it, but it's a difficult one to argue for any economic or societal benefit, unless he just continues to lie and state that 27,000 foreign buyers, mostly on the Costas, is what is causing most of the problems in the property market. It's not. As I said on the interview, if you think you might be affected in the future by these potential changes, if you think this is going to happen and you don't fancy paying an extra tax or being banned altogether from buying, then simple. It's time to get your skates on and buy as soon as possible, isn't it? The next thing we're going to talk about is for you digital nomads out there, and also a bit for non-lucrative visa applications. We now know the amounts you need to prove to apply for your Digital Nomad Visa for 2025. The amounts have been updated roughly in line with inflation for 2025, meaning that now a single applicant needs to show €2,763 per month of income, otherwise known as 33,156 per year. One applicant plus one dependent is $3,800 per month, $45,600 per year. So the dependent amount is $1,037 on top of the original $2,763. One applicant plus two dependents goes up by an extra €690 per month to $4,490, and one applicant plus three dependents is €5,181 per month, or an extra €691. That extra euro is because the second kid is more expensive, obviously. Remember that these are the numbers also used for the NLV normally, with one difference. On the renewal for the second year, you need to double these amounts, as the renewal was 2 years, but is now 4, and is not usually shown as an income for the NLV, but through savings, unless you are on a very good pension. The savings need to be in a bank or recognised financial institution, and it requires you to prove ownership of that money. Simple. Now we get into the fun part. So last week, there was a CNN article that lit up the internet because it was all about a woman who decided that Spain wasn't for her after living here for a short time. So I thought today I'd just go through that article. Not everyone loves it when they come to Spain. CNN this week did one of two things. It either highlighted a case of someone who didn't find Spain to their taste, or as I prefer to see it, they set up someone to look like an absolute idiot with selective quotes and leading questions. You might think the former, I tend towards the latter, but I'll go with the former. The link is in the show notes so you can enjoy this clusterfuck of stupidity, or choose to think she has been presented as a patsy. So, Cristina, because that is her name, decided to move to Spain from Miami. And despite speaking Spanish, it seems the limit of her homework before coming to Spain was deciding to come and live in Spain. She says she did her homework, but despite having visited Spain various times, she says she didn't have good information. My question would be, is the internet not available in Miami? Was she insulated in a absorbing bubble while she came to Spain? Because all the information's out there if you know where to look. She moved to Santander in the north of Spain to a rented house, and after a few months bought a place because, and I quote, she fell in love with the place. So, up to here, all good. But then, apparently after just a year of honeymoon, she fell out of love with the place. So careful any future husband of Cristina, she doesn't seem set on anything for long. And I'd suggest here that she is a MAGA type because, and I quote again, the way the country is going and the way they do things is definitely not what I'm used to. And the first sticking point was the weather. Shock horror. I just couldn't take 6 months or 5 months of bad weather, she says. Now, just one thing here. We usually count up when using two numbers, so we'd say 5 or 6 months, not 6 or 5. But hey, that's just me. But do you know, Cristina? Sometimes it just rains 5 days out of the week, and it rains day and night. Now here again, I interrupt the genius that is Cristina to let you know one thing. The north of Spain is known as the Green Coast. Not the Costa del Sol, not the Costa Tropical, they're elsewhere in the country. It's called the Costa Verde, the Green Coast, because it's very green. How do things get green? It's because, well, it rains a lot. And plants grow, and they make it green. Any basic internet search for climate and weather will tell you about the whole of northern Spain. But apparently, it gets cold too. Go figure. But she carried on. You also have a lot of humidity and wind, and when all of those things add up, it's a very cold, gloomy, and depressing winter. And all these elements make it easy for you to get sick. Psst! You don't get sick because of weather, Cristina. But you'll never know that now because you're leaving the WHO, the World Health Organization, for some reason in America. Anyway, she didn't like the heat either. Be prepared to not live with air conditioning, she opines, to live with the windows open. A bit of a Goldilocks creature is our Cristina. Temperature is never just right. How far should she open the windows to get that optimum temperature? And, oh yeah, we actually have her air conditioning here, but you need to install it. It doesn't just appear by magic. But she couldn't just move south to a warmer climate in Spain either, because Cristina believes rubbish she reads on Facebook forums, it seems. She explains that she was worried about the prospect of squatters taking over if she purchased the second property in Spain and left one empty. The country has a big problem with squatters, she says, without any evidence at all, adding that if you buy a property over there, you run the risk of it being occupied. This never happened to her, of course, but hearsay are not just an iffy 90s pop group from the UK. Every day I leave home and I have to set up a rabid dog at my door so I don't get back to a pack of squatters playing flamenco in my living room. 17 locks I have on my front door just in case. You should see my keyring. We all do this. It's just part of life in Spain, innit? Anyway, back to Cristina. The other thing that really bothered me about them over there was their way of living and their way of doing things, she says. So the lifestyle she never really noticed in all of her previous visits to Spain then. All of the businesses and restaurants, for the most part, close at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Banks close at 2 and you can't do anything. There's no services being provided. Sort your life out, girl. We don't need 24-hour banking because we have ATMs. Know them? Oh yeah, and apps. And the internet and stuff. And things don't close at 3 or 4. That's a lie. They close at 1:30 or 2. They open again after 4 because people have had time for lunch and maybe a little family time with the kids, or even that coveted siesta, one of the reasons for coming to Spain. But anyway, Cristina carried on. Apparently we eat at the wrong time for Cristina too. The differing meal times was another source of frustration for her. You can't go and eat because they close at 4 and then they don't open again until 8, 9 o'clock at night, she adds. We call that lunch and dinner, but each their own. Maybe if you need some sustenance around 6 p.m, you could actually make yourself a snack or something. You had a kitchen, right? Or you had a nearby supermarket, or doesn't Spain have those either? Or you could fit in with the locals, as I'm sure you insist to the immigrants in the good old US of A. But nothing gets past Detective Cristina. She also made a huge discovery. I noticed that the cheaper homes for rent, you will find them on the outskirts of the big city in remote areas, she says. Out in the country, some houses and apartments can be in a town that's not that good. It may not have that many services, so it just depends. Go figure. Market forces work in Spain just like any other country, Cristina. Is that a surprise? And then finally, we have the doozy. While Cristina didn't necessarily have strong opinions about Spanish food before moving here, she grew to dislike it, finding it to be largely fried, greasy, and unhealthy. That was an irony klaxon just there. Yep, an irony klaxon. It's an American saying that Spanish food is fried, greasy, and unhealthy. The home of the hamburger. Let me just pause there. Yep, that's sunk in now. Carry on, Cristina. After a while, I got really tired and grossed out with the Spanish food. You're just like, okay, I'm done with the French fries. I'm done with the seafood. It's like seafood for everything. Have mercy. Seafood with everything rather than chicken nuggets and burgers. How shall we survive? Luckily, not everyone is like Cristina. Some people do their research and choose wisely based on what they're looking for. Embedded in the article, if you click on the link, is another about a family that actually moved to Valencia, not Santander, in 2018 and absolutely love it here. And you can see that in the show notes. So let me know if you think I'm being cruel and judgmental here. I'll agree with you because I have. But as we all know, there's no cure for stupidity. All it takes is a single vote for a Satsuma-faced ignoramus. We once had a client who had previously moved to Italy and only lasted a year because there was too much Italian food and they couldn't get Mexican there. Go figure. Our last thing today is a very quick thing about the destruction of the USA because, you know, whatever. I got told by someone I should keep politics out of the blog, the descriptions, and all of our outreach stuff. I told them I'd write and say what the hell I wanted because, well, I felt like it. My page, my blog, my podcast, my rules. If I want to alienate some people, then I will, and I'll do it happily. The reason they reckoned I should butt out was because I criticised their king, the Naranjito Nazi, the Satsuma Stalin, the Mango Mussolini, the Orange Shitgiven, the Elon enabler, and the guy currently gutting the US government and abdicating responsibility for any commitments they have abroad. The guy starting a trade war with neighbouring countries and friends and the rest of the world to drive up prices for everything in his home country. the USA. The one who thinks a few sandals resorts on the Gaza Strip will solve the Middle East problem. That guy. Anyway, as he continues on his merry way destroying everything that many Americans hold dear, our inquiries keep going up and the percentage of inquiries from the States is on a constant uptick. Keep going, Donald, mate. We'll keep helping the sane half of the States leave and settle here. So that's it for this month. But we will be having a slightly different podcast next, and it might be out sooner than you think. We'll be interviewing John Wolfendale from Ecovita Homes and asking him all about sustainability in construction and building your own more ecologically friendly home in Spain. We've already done the interview, and it might well be released next week if I don't get too busy. So listen for that. So until next time, if you have any questions, then you can ask us them on information@valenciaproperty.com. Or you can follow me on Blue Sky, search me out on Grey Hunt there, now that I've finally slain the Twitter account. Yes, no more Nazi enablism from me. Meanwhile, check out the show notes, read all about the fantastic Cristina, and more. If you manage to message her, let her know about this podcast so she can have a listen perhaps. Or maybe not. Until next time, over and out from Valencia. We look forward to hearing from you.